For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask to address the House for 1 minute for the purpose of inquiring about next week's schedule.
Objection, so ordered.
I thank the Speaker, and I yield to the gentleman from Maryland, the Majority Leader, for the purpose of announcing the schedule.
I thank the Republican whip for yielding. On Monday, the House will meet at 12:30 p.m. for morning hour and 2 p.m. for legislative business. On Tuesday, the House will meet at 10:30 a.m. for morning hour and 12 p.m. for legislative business. On Wednesday and Thursday, the House will meet at 10 a.m. for legislative business. On Friday, no votes are expected. We will consider several bills under suspension of the rules. A complete list of suspension will be announced by the close of business tomorrow, as is usual. In addition, we'll consider H.R. 1262, the Water Quality Investment Act of 2009. We also possibly will consider H.R. 157, the District of Columbia House Voting Rights Act of 2009.
I thank the gentleman, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd ask the gentleman regarding the schedule going forward, if he could tell the House what the timing would be on bringing the so-called card check bill to the floor.
With respect to the card check bill, as the gentleman knows, we have already passed that bill with a very handy vote. We believe that that is an appropriate bill to be passed and are supportive of it. However, we passed that bill. The Senate has indicated that they're going to consider that bill, and my expectation is that they will be doing so in the relatively near future, and we will see what action they take.
I thank the gentleman. So, Mr. Speaker, I would say to the gentleman that we have in this House passed in prior Congresses that bill. As the gentleman knows, there are plenty of new members here that have not had a chance to vote on that bill. So if I hear the gentleman correctly, that we will await Senate action prior to any House action.
I want to make it clear, if the gentleman will yield.
I yield.
I want to make it clear that it is our intention to move this bill, but we are expecting the Senate to move, and we'll see what they have done, and we will take that up in good time.
Thank the gentleman. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to ask the gentleman for the anticipated timing on the public lands bill, and when the gentleman thinks that he'll bring that to the floor.
Yeah. As you know, there's a lot of interest on both sides of the aisle on this bill, and very significant interest in the Senate to see this bill completed and sent to the President. We'll continue to work together with the Republican leadership and Senate leadership to get this bill to the President's desk as soon as possible. I've discussed this, as you know, with you and the leader, and so we're hoping to bring this forward soon, and possibly next week.
I thank the gentleman. Mr. Speaker, I'd also point out to the gentleman from Maryland, there's been a lot of discussion lately, certainly on the part of the White House, the President, about his plans for making sure of the security of our troops in Iraq, and his announcement of the withdrawal timeline. And I know that the Speaker has also spoken out on this issue, seeming to have somewhat of a different position than the White House on this. I know the gentleman himself, I believe, has said that he is in agreement with the President. We support the President, Mr. Speaker, in his decision to listen to the commanders on the ground. And I would note that in Congress's past, we certainly have had a number of resolutions based on timeline for withdrawal of our troops, and would ask the gentleman, does he think, or is he anticipating any type of resolution of disapproval of the President's announcement?
Will the gentleman yield?
I yield.
As you have stated, the President has announced a plan last Friday and to a meeting in the White House, and then announced it publicly down at Camp Lejeune. It calls for withdrawal of our troops to be out of Iraq in terms of a military role within 18 months. This is, I think, personally a responsible plan. The gentleman asked me whether or not I think there'll be a resolution of disapproval. I don't think there'll be a resolution of disapproval. Clearly, as the gentleman well knows, there will be an authorizing bill that will come forward later this spring. There will be an appropriation bill appropriating money for the Defense Department, and there are obviously those two opportunities will present themselves to members who may want to express themselves on this issue. But as to the gentleman's question, do I expect a resolution of disapproval, I do not.
I thank the gentleman on that. Mr. Speaker, I'd ask the gentleman, just in the context of the budget discussion that is ongoing, obviously here on Capitol Hill in Congress and at the White House, and there are some unanswered questions as far as the Republican conference is concerned as to the direction that this budget that the leader sees coming through the House. Obviously, there have been some discussions about charitable giving, that the gentleman himself has raised concerns. I have extraordinary concerns about taking away incentives to help support our charities in such a tough economic period, and was wondering if the gentleman could comment on whether he felt that the House budget that he will bring to the floor would reflect our concern that perhaps we shouldn't be throttling back on people's giving to charities.
Well, the gentleman,
I yield.
I thank the gentleman for his question, and I understand his concern. As he says, I've expressed a concern with respect to that issue. However, having said that, I'm not going to anticipate at this point in time what the Budget Committee is going to do. Clearly, the Budget Committee is having hearings. The Budget Committee will be some weeks from now marking up a budget and bringing it to the floor. As you know, we are very committed on this side of the aisle to paying our bills and trying to reduce our deficit. Clearly, we've added very substantially to the deficit because of the economic crisis that confronts us. But we still feel a great responsibility to move ahead on making sure that we move towards reducing that deficit in the long term. Clearly, the President has proposed, from our perspective, one of the most honest budgets that we've received, in the sense that it includes costs of the war, it includes costs for adjusting the alternative minimum tax, it includes the cost within its budget contemplation of fixing the doctor's payments from Medicare. So in all those ways and more, this budget sets forth a responsible alternative for us to pursue. In addition, as the gentleman knows, it provides for the continuation of a tax cut for 95% of Americans' families. So we think, and individuals, we think those are all very important proposals. We know that the Budget Committee will be considering that. As the gentleman knows, both your side of the aisle and my side of the aisle will be discussing and debating that, and we'll be adopting a budget. I do not want to, at this point in time, anticipate each and every item that they may or may not include in that budget, however.
I would thank the gentleman for that answer, and just would like to underscore our concern that, as he knows and we've discussed as late as today at the President's Summit on the health care at the White House, these are extraordinary times. We have tough choices to make. Families are out there struggling to make ends meet, and the President has continued to say that we will provide tax relief for working Americans. We will provide tax relief to 95% of the American people. The trouble, Mr. Speaker, that we're having is when we hear members of the President's administration talk about the President's desire to see cap-and-trade legislation passed through this House, and the admission on the part of officials in the administration that that legislation would produce $1,300 worth of additional tax to every household in this country. If we do the math with the Make Work Pay program, and even if one was able to get the maximum relief under that program, that's an $800 relief for a household. You do the math, we still are at a point where you have a $500 deficit in each household if every one of those were to be able to receive the maximum relief. So I would ask the gentleman, as far as the overall sense of the budget that he will bring to the floor, are we really going to deliver on this tax relief, or are we going to try and address this cap-and-trade program, which has now been admitted to be an extra tax that will outweigh any tax relief under the Make Work Pay program?
Will the gentleman yield? Thank the gentleman for his question. Let me first observe that quite obviously we are going to provide for tax relief. As the President said in his campaign, as he's reiterated in his speech to the joint session, tax relief for 95% of taxpayers. We have every intention of pursuing that. We also have every intention of having a fiscally responsible budget. We also, as the President also indicated in his speech to the joint session, pursue vigorously energy independence and the issue of global warming. The gentleman speaks of one of the alternatives, an alternative proposed by the President, to deal with that issue in terms of cap and trade. The Energy Committee, Energy and Commerce Committee, will be considering that, as the gentleman knows, and I'm not going to anticipate their specific action, but I am going to say that we are committed on this side of the aisle, as I hope your side of the aisle would be as well, in very, very substantially reducing the carbon footprint that we are making in this country, and indeed that's being made around the world, which we believe, and we believe that science is pretty clear on this, and very frankly, the previous administration, which did not express that view early in its tenure, during its last year, changed somewhat its view. In any event, we want to deal with that, and the gentleman has mentioned an alternative the President has proposed. It's an alternative supported by a large number of people, and that is before the committee, and we'll see what the committee does with it.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the gentleman again, and would say that, again, our priority must be on, as he has said in the past as well, must be on this economy. It must be on maintaining, protecting, and creating jobs. We believe, as the gentleman knows, on this side of the aisle, that the way to do that is to focus on small businesses, to ensure that we're not adding burden to the real job generators, which are our small businesses. So if we're talking about bringing this budget forward and talking about PAYGO, as the gentleman has referred to, I know in last year we passed the stimulus bill, and the gentleman indicated that we waived PAYGO back then for tax relief. I know that members on our side of the aisle would certainly be supportive of any bit of relief we could give to those small businesses. But, Mr. Speaker, I'd ask the gentleman, and again, in the context of where we're operating now, and the fact that the Dow Jones dropped another 280 points today, and the fact we've not gotten from the White House and the administration a plan for the bank fix. We don't know the direction that the TARP funding is going. We have a sense from some of the statements made in the Budget Committee and others this last several days that the TARP money has been all committed, and if so, is there any indication, do we know how much more money will be impacting this budget? Because, Mr. Speaker, I'd ask the gentleman how he expects this House to produce an honest budget if we do not know the plans of this administration, which will occur, I'm sure, imminently in their request for more assistance and more money towards the banking problem. And I yield.
I thank the gentleman for his question, and he, of course, at the center of that question is the crisis that we confront in the economy. As the gentleman knows, he talked about, in a bipartisan way, supporting the President's policy on Iraq. As the gentleman knows, in a bipartisan way, we supported the Bush administration's request both in January of 2008, in September of 2008, and again in December of 2008 when the President made a request for the second tranche of the TARP. I think every member of this Congress believes that the first tranche did not work as well as we had hoped it would work. We also, in these past 2 weeks, have passed extraordinarily quickly and robustly consistent with the advice of the last administration and this administration, an attempt to do what the gentleman says we want to do, create jobs. The gentleman also knows that we passed a recovery and reinvestment bill that had over $250 billion of tax relief, some for individuals and some for small businesses, some for businesses generally. About 35% of that bill was tax relief for our citizens. The other percentage of that bill was for investment, was for dealing with those who have been put at deepest risk by the economic crisis in terms of losing jobs, in terms of not being able to feed their families and not having health care available to them. So I say to my friend that as we move forward on the budget and as we look to the administration for the clarification that the gentleman seeks, appropriately in my opinion, and in our opinion, a more specific outline of how the administration is going to proceed, we will have that in consideration when we produce a budget. And as I say, we intend to produce a responsible budget that looks towards a deficit reduction. That obviously won't be until some time from now. We've got to turn this economy around, start creating jobs, which hopefully will have the effect of the stock market going up, not down, which is to the interest of all of us.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the gentleman. I yield back my time.